All right, so here we are. We've got advice from six-time NCAA track and field All-American on how to buy your shoes. It's the ultimate shoe buying guide today. So obviously, the reason why I mentioned that track and field resume is because I've gone through a lot of shoes, and I definitely know what shoes feel good and what shoes don't feel good on my feet and all my teammates and all my clients' feet and everyone else that's family members and friends and people that just ask me about shoes. So shoes, that's my game, my friend. So let's talk about it. See, I actually went to the store just yesterday, and that's actually what made me think about this. Is I saw people walking around trying on shoes. I even saw some people try on shoes and then buy them, and I said, those shoes aren't for you. So let's try to avoid that for you that's watching this video. Let's try to avoid buying the wrong shoes by listening to what I have to say about how you should buy your shoes. So first and foremost, you should regularly measure your feet. Why? Well, I found this out this weekend as I was buying shoes. As you get older, your feet get wider and longer. I remember when I first graduated from college. In fact, when I was in college, like I said, bought a lot of pairs of shoes, and I was a size 10 and a half. This weekend, as I went to the store, I ranged between 11 and 12, depending on the shoe type. So that also can be a factor. It's not only as you get older, your feet grow, but it also depends on the manufacturer, the brand of the shoe. 11 in a Nike might not be the same as an 11 in an Adidas or a K-Swiss. So that is something to be aware of. One thing that you can do to kind of alleviate that confusion is that when you go home, you can just draw a little, or if you're already at home, you can draw a little trace outline of your foot. And you can take that outline, put it right on the bottom of all the shoes that you like, and if it looks like it fits, it's probably going to work. So one thing that actually I recommend that you do is that when you're actually trying your shoes on, if it does look like it fits on the bottom of the shoe, make sure that you have about a half an inch space between your biggest toe and the end of your shoe. Like you don't want to have too much space because then your foot's going to be sliding around there and there like a slip and slide. And you don't want to have not enough space because as you're moving around, your foot is going to expand, your toes are going to want to move around, and if you don't have the space for them to do that, well, then you're going to run into some complications later on with your stability. Speaking of toes, let's talk about this. Now, I actually prefer a wider toe box, and there's actually quite a few people that tell me that they prefer what's called Crocs. I'm sure you've heard of Crocs. You might even have some friends that wear Crocs. I personally don't. I don't like the look of them, but this is just one person. I'm sure they they don't base their sales on my personal opinion. But there actually is a really interesting function to the Crocs, and there's a reason why a lot of people like Crocs, especially people that have flat feet. You see, with the Crocs, they have a wider toe box. There's normally a wider toe box in your average shoe. Now, if you don't have a wide toe box, or let's talk about first having a wider toe box. If you have a wider toe box, you actually have the ability to spread your toes. And the reason why that comes into play with people that have flat feet is because if you don't have the ability to spread your toes, well then if you have a flat foot, your weight is going to shift over into the inside of your knee and the inside of your ankle, and you don't have as much support there because obviously your knee is the inside of your knee and the inside of your ankle is not supposed to support you that way. So yeah, if you do have wider feet, if you do have flatter feet, you probably want to err on the side of a wider toe box, all right? Actually, pretty much for everyone, I would say you probably want to have a wider toe box, but you especially want to have a wider toe box for those times or for those people that have feet that are a little bit flatter. Now, speaking of toe boxes, you want to also make sure that that toe box is flexible. You don't want it too flexible. You don't want to be able to bend your shoe in half. But at the same time, you don't want your shoe to have no flexibility whatsoever. Too flexible, you don't have enough stability. And not flexible enough, you won't have enough mobility. So you have to find that happy medium between stability and mobility in your shoe. One thing you don't want to have mobility in, though, is your midfoot. You don't want to have the midfoot of your shoe unstable because of the fact that, or I should say flexible, because of the fact that if you have too much flexibility in the midfoot, meaning that you can fold your shoe in half, that means that you're not going to have the stability in the middle of your foot, and that's probably the most important part to have stability in. So moving on to the back of the shoe, where we're almost done here. Like I said, this is an ultimate guide to buying your shoes. You are absolutely going to know exactly what shoes to buy for your foot after you watch this video. So on the back side of your shoe, I know that a lot of people kind of like them a little snug. That's actually the wrong reasoning here. That's the wrong idea here. What you want to do is you actually want to have a little bit of room. You see, if you have the heel cup of your shoe cradling your foot, well, then you won't have the movement, you won't have the mobility that's necessary for that foot. So if your foot is being held tightly and is not able to move, because your ankle, believe it or not, your heel of your foot actually does move as you move. So as you walk, your ankle has a little bit of a movement towards the back end of your step. So if you don't necessarily, or if you don't have that ability to move your heel around, well, you're going to run into some issues. Not to mention that if you have that super tight heel, most likely that back side of that foot, that back side of the shoe that kind of comes up into your Achilles, that is most likely going to rub into the back of your Achilles, and that's going to cause obviously blisters. If not blisters, it's going to cause some real issues with your Achilles in general. You won't have the mobility, and that can have you run into some serious problems. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything. You want to make sure that you measure your foot regularly. You can have the docent or the the foot. I said the docent. The person, the shoe associate that can help you out with measuring your shoe. Again, if you don't want to go through that route, you can just trace your foot at home, put it on the bottom of every shoe that you want to get, and see if it fits. See if it fits. You want to make sure that you have a relatively flexible toe box, not too flexible, because then you have no stability. You don't want it not flexible enough, because then you don't have mobility. You want to make sure that the midsole or the middle of your shoe is not able to bend in half, because you definitely need stability in the middle of the shoe. If you have too much mobility there, then you won't have that stability. And finally, you want to make sure that you have, well, a little bit of room for your heels to move around, because if you don't have that movement in your heels, you're going to get blisters, and you might have some issues with your calf and Achilles later on. Oh, I did forget to mention one thing. If you do have bunions or hammer toes or something like that, you definitely want to be aware of that, and you want to make sure that you have enough room in your foot. You absolutely want to have a wider toe box if you have those issues with your toes. You want to make sure your feet have enough room to maneuver, have enough room to move around. I know back when I was in college and when I was younger, I always thought it was better to have your foot just kind of encapsulated by your shoe, but that's really not the best idea, because again, you want to have that mobility. Otherwise, you just have rocks on the bottom of your foot, or you have rocks on the bottom of your legs, and you're just dragging them along, and they're not serving any purpose. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up. I hope that helps you in buying your shoe buying endeavors. If you have any questions, or if you have any comments about this or any video, feel free to leave it down in the comment section. I'd really appreciate you subscribing, and obviously telling your friends about this channel, because that'll help us help you by answering more questions. All right, thanks so much for watching, and as always, keep good company.
That's awesome!